Okay, so this is our lunar observance night, and it's the first lunar observance night since the entering of the formal Vasa period, the traditional rains retreat that we keep in Buddhist tradition, certainly in Thailand and Southeast Asian countries, India. It's the monsoon season, it's a rainy season, and so it is a period of retreat and practice, and particularly in the monasteries that I was trained in Thailand, and this would be a time of kind of reviewing and renewing commitment to both the formal practice as well as the study and practice of our monastic discipline, and so that I think there's already been several Vinaya classes for the monks. And I thought this evening it'd probably be useful to really maybe review and reflect on the meditation practice, and because I think it's really important for us all. Whether you're a new practitioner or somebody who's been practicing for a long time, to be reviewing and recollecting what's the relationship to one's formal practice. What is how do I keep a sense of kind of a refreshed interest in the meditation, because if anything that we do, if we just do it over and over again, then it can become old and stale and boring. And if one allows the meditation to drift into that kind of perspective, then then one's practice and training doesn't really flourish or mature. So it's really important to be taking the time from time to time, and certainly each year, a couple times a year, doing a kind of a hitting the reset button and making sure that your relationship to the meditation practice is on course, so that say for myself, I've been practicing for a long time. This is my 50th rains retreat, so I've been doing this for a while, and I remember, I think it was maybe when people ask me about my, and certainly over this last few years, several years, many years, people ask me about my life or my biography and my practice, and one of the and how I practice. But one of the things that as a reflecting on it, it's sort of like the practice, meditation practice, the study and exploration of the Buddha's teachings. I find, really interesting and invigorating, and which is the first. I can remember when I first ordained, and I was just so bored of everything, and I just didn't find much interested me. And you think, well, you do something for 50 years, you think you get bored of it, but to me, that's the beauty and the uniqueness of the Buddha's teaching and this training of the heart, that there is something to keep getting interested and refreshed with all the time, and so that picking up I think that theme of refreshing is really important, because you know, like just taking the you know, your fundamental. I mean, some pretty basic things. I mean, you sit down, cross your legs, and you breathe. I mean, it's about as basic as it gets. But you need to be mindful, you need to be present, you need to be alert. And you have to keep renewing that and refreshing that alertness and presence. And so that as one does that, when one does sit down, cross one's leg, paying attention to posture, that sense of really paying attention to a balanced, relaxed posture. Again, anything that we do, if we do it over and over again, we can just kind of slump into it, and it's, you know, that's a good. I mean, that's kind of an ordinary default option in the human experience, but to just give that little extra interest and pay attention to the posture. You don't, if you're too stiff, too tight, too ramrod straight, you'll really, that gets tiring. And if it's too loose, too lackadaisical, that gets tiring as well. So it's just really learning how to get a balance and using the physical posture as a basis for exploration. How do you relax into something as basic as sitting down? So just that sense of getting your posture so that the back is upright. You've got a cushion that works for you, or not. I mean, some people are certainly. When I was beginning my training, and for pretty much all the time I lived in Thailand, I mean, a cushion and a mat was unheard of. And because certainly in Thailand, and particularly the northeast of Thailand, everybody grew up on the floor, and they were used to sitting cross-legged for long periods of time, and they were comfortable like that. I've told the story many times of the one of the monks going off to the north of Thailand and living with a teacher who really emphasized sitting in full lotus, and so he came back and then was giving a talk to the villagers and the little old ladies who come for the the lunar observance, and they, and they joined for the whole night to do chanting, meditation, listening to talks, and so you got them to sit in full lotus, and it was sort of like, boop, pop, and, sit there. I mean, what's the big deal? it's, it's, but yeah, for us it's a bit more difficult, so that we just don't have that familiarity with sitting on the floor. So just learning how to learning the basics, and getting either if one's not at all comfortable, and on to be sitting in a chair or a bench, or having a cushion or a couple cushions, and but main thing is that you can relax into the posture, so that you can pay attention to the balance of the posture, and the kind of the uprightness of the spine, and so that the shoulders are nice and kind of square and straight, and your arms are hanging loosely from the shoulders. Your head is sitting upright, and you're not sort of leaning forward too much. You're not leaning backwards. You're not off to one side or the other. There's a nice balanced posture, because when you sit for long periods of time and relax into the breathing, then you want to be able to just let the body go, let the body settle. It's not that you try to disregard the body, but it's more like the body, if you allow the body to be really comfortable and alert and upright, you can just let it be, and then you can relax into the rhythm of the breath, and then just experimenting with paying attention to the sensation at the tip of the nose, or the sensation at the back of the throat, or the sensation at the chest, or the sensation at the abdomen. It's not, it's just getting a familiarity with the rhythm of the breath, and the sensation of the breath, and allowing to, and you don't want to be trying to control the breath, but sometimes you do want to modulate the breath, so that you're allowing a sense of what is actually useful for relaxing and settling. Kind of a nice, easy, long breath. Sometimes a short breath. Sometimes a forceful breath. Sometimes a really relaxed breath. I mean, you want to be paying it, not trying, and again, not controlling, but it's sort of saying, well, what is it that helps alertness and attention? Because we, again, so you're looking at balances, because we can get, and so that alertness and attention is how do we develop a continuity of attention, so that it's sustainable and interesting. And so you have to learn how to be comfortable with the breath, and learn how to be present with when it's like this, am I relaxing? Am I settling? Am I nice and balanced? Is it nice and even? and it's just, and you learn through that with just experimenting. Uh, this is the sort of thing that doesn't come through just again forcing or through theory. It's through doing it and getting so familiar with the what are, when do we tighten up? When do we drift? When do we get sloppy? When do we get obsessed about something? And it's really important to pay attention to that interplay between the body and the mind, because sometimes we get overly obsessed with the mind, and me and my thinking, that it's kind of neurotic. But you really want to learn from the different thought patterns and the moods that come up. And one of the ways you can really learn about the moods is, I mean, of course, you pay attention to the content, but you want to be paying attention to how it feels. And that's where, again, this coming back to the body is so important. Because learning, what does it feel like when we're upset about something? What does it feel like when we're worried about something? What's the sort of the whole body mind feeling when we just want something so badly, and because it's not like it's not like you're trying to control, but you're really trying to learn what it feels like. This is one of the things that Ajahn Chah said that really made an impression on me, was that the language of Dhamma is the language of feeling. It's not. This is not about philosophy or idealization of anything. It's how do you feel, and bottom line, as the Buddha pointed to as the foundation of his teaching, is there's this fundamental suffering, this dissatisfaction, this discontent, this dis-ease that we all don't want to experience, and we keep repeating it over and over again. So that you want to get a handle on that through feeling. And the meditation is really important for getting a sense of what are the moods, what are the patterns of mind, what are those habits and conditioning that we carry into our relationship to ourself and relationship to the world around us. We really have to learn how to hold up a mirror and see that, and the mirror that we hold up is our meditation and our attention to a simple meditation object like the breath. I mean, there are many, say in Buddhist practice, there are many different meditation objects, but the one the Buddha himself taught the most frequently, and the one that the Buddha himself said was his kind of go-to object of meditation, is mindfulness of breathing. And of course, as I said, I mean, he taught many different techniques, and it's not that you can't use them, experiment with them, try them. as either primary objects or adjuncts to the breath. But I think it's really important to become very, very familiar with the breath. For most people, it's accessible. For most people, it can be the fundamental object, and then you can learn different things from as you go on. But you've got something to fall back to all the time, and particularly, as I say, in the beginning, a period of the formal rains retreat, or any period of retreat that we do, it's helpful to review and refresh our relationship to our practice and to our meditation in particular. And so to give oneself that, on a certain level, is giving oneself a gift. It's an act of generosity toward oneself, to really give oneself the time and the attention, the effort to really try to clarify one's relationship to the practice. One of the things that is important to recognize, say, when we say begin a period of practice, or when we begin a meditation, or whenever, is the sense of stepping back from the things that complicate and proliferate the mind. Because that as a habit that keeps us off balance and suffering. It's those the things that sort of taint the steadiness or clarity of the mind. And that's when the Buddha's, in the idiom that the Buddha uses in his meditation instructions. Of course, there's the emphasis on taking refuges, which you just did, where you're actually clarifying, well, what are the fundamental, what's most important to me, and so that Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, having a refuge in truth, in the example of integrity, the example of the awakening of the Buddha himself. That's what's really important. That's what's really a refuge. But one of the things, so that and clarifying one's refuges, clarifying one's sila, one's virtue, one's integrity, because that tends to, and again, as on a lunar observance night, we do it it's a ceremony that the lay community does, and then for the monastics we do a renewal of our, and the novices, anagaricas, we do a renewal of our precepts, and because it's so important to establish a wholesome relationship with our actions of body and speech, because the reality of having a human body and mind is we remember what we've done, and you want to not be plagued by memories that kind of just don't make the mind happy. This is a very fundamental thing, and so that sense of clarifying the refuge, clarifying the relationship to sila, and that because that clarity of those fundamentals, it brings a happiness to the mind, an ease, and having that ease brings a certain delight, and that's a great basis for going forward in the development of the heart. As one does that and then takes the time, sets the intention to train the heart, the finding a suitable time, suitable situation, coming into the hall, being at one's dwelling place, then reflecting on that stepping back. In the idiom that the Buddha uses, viviceva kamehi, vivicha akusalehi dhammehi, and it's secluded from sensuality, secluded from unwholesome states, and it's that stepping back from the things that complicate and proliferate the mind. So stepping back from that constant pursuit of gratification, stimulation, looking for a kind of a sensory excitement, whether it's just out of habit or out of boredom, but learning how to be content within oneself without having to, and certainly in this modern era, I mean, the avenues of sensory and sensual stimulation are kind of endless, and it doesn't really make for a whole lot of happiness or peace. So that learning how to be content and happy within simplicity, and having some physical quiet, being in one's kuti, being in one's home, being in one's meditation hall, and just taking an interest into what's it feel like to be quiet? What's it feel like to allow the mind to settle rather than poking it all the time to get more stirred up? So that sense of secluded from sensuality, secluded from sensual pleasures, sensual stimulation, secluded from unwholesome states. So that's stepping back from irritation, aversion, ill will. A good way of doing that is don't read the news. It's just, and people feel they've got an obligation to know what's going on all the time. Why would you do that to yourself? It's irritating. So, and what you find, what gets into the media is not what makes you peaceful or contented or happy. It's what stirs up indignation and contention. It's just not worth it. If you place value on peace and happiness, then don't do that to yourself. And so that's secluded from unwholesome states, sensuality, ill will, dullness, and sort of the dullness, lassitude, sloth and torpor. It's an unwholesome state. Just training the mind, learning how to pay attention, taking an interest in the things that have real value. It's like Ajahn Chah was once asked, why he didn't take much interest in the news or social issues, and he said, "Well, I'm uh, I'm interested in things that have an end to them." And so the Buddha's teaching is looking for an ending, looking for a completion. It's not sort of looking for an annihilation, but it's looking for a completion. Where do you find fulfillment and completion? So finding something settling. So that the teachings of the Buddha are all about that which takes one to a point of completion and finishing. And so that to take an interest in that. And that takes and it does take an interest. And you don't, this is not liberation through dullness. It's liberation, that's one of the descriptions of the word, or meanings, literal meanings of the word Buddha, is to awake, one who is awakened. And for us to experience and taste the flavor of what the Buddha is pointing to, we need to be awake, we need to be alert, we need to be present. And that, because dullness is an unwholesome state. It's not, it's interesting in the sense of, like from more like a Western or Judeo-Christian sense, something that's like kind of sinful or, is seen as, something harmful, but say for the Buddha, like dullness and that kind of lassitude of mind is unwholesome in that you're not harming anybody else really, but you're harming yourself by not giving proper attention to things. So just learning how to give proper attention to a neutral object, the breath coming in, the breath going out, your posture, your mood, your mental state. There's a brightness of heart that is required to be cultivated for that. So that paying attention to the breath, paying attention to the posture, and stepping back, secluded from unwholesome states. Restlessness, worry, is, the Buddha said, is a hindrance. It's an unwholesome mental state. And learning how to relinquish the obsession with, because we think somehow that if we worry about it, it's going to, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? It's like, there's some feeling of like necessity that it really needs to be worried about, and it's not really true at all. So that sense of relinquishing that restless, learning how to rest in contentment. And contentment requires mindfulness, requires clarity, requires, again, waking up to kind of the beauty and peace of this present moment. And these are just your 5 basic hindrances that the Buddha points to. But it's helpful to get a reflection around it, or to try to make it more, again, rather than sort of ticking it off as a list from a book you've read. How do you experience it? What's the feeling? What's it feel when you relinquish, when you or when you sustain attention in a way that's not arising? Sort of it's not just the they say the relinquishing or letting go of a hindrance. It's also what do you do for the non-arising of those hindrances? So say the non-arising of sensual desire, non-arising of aversion, non-arising of dullness, non-arising of restlessness, non-arising of doubt. It's not that you need to be propping up some belief that I don't have any doubt. It's sort of, how do you dwell in confidence and faith in the truth of the Buddha's of his teaching, or the confidence and faith in the experience of peace. So it's this sense of exploring the nuances of the practice and the training, and particularly with the breath, with the meditation itself. It's because on a moment-to-moment experience, how do we sustain mindfulness and clear comprehension? How do we sustain a sense of clarity and well-being? Because those are both the tools that we rely on for the meditation, but it's also a goal that we're working towards or aspiring toward, or laying the foundation for. So just to be able to explore that, and particularly as we begin this period of the Vassa period, the rains retreat period, go back and review your how do I relate to something as fundamental as the refuges? Because it's something we hear about right from the very beginning of our interest in Buddhist practice. But that relationship to the refuges of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, relationship to our sila, our conduct with integrity and virtue. How do we use it as a basis of uplift and gratification, delight? And then similarly with the developing of our formal meditation. There's the continuity of mindfulness that we want to be developing in our day-to-day life. But then when we sit down, we have the time to sit down and meditate, how do we keep it interesting? How do we keep an interest sustained within the heart? And so it's an ongoing question. And how do we open ourselves to the experience of contentment and peace and inner happiness, and kind of delight in and delight in truth, delight in the Dhamma, because it's something that in our chant, like the morning chanting, there's a phrase that describes the Dhamma that the Buddha taught as beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. And I think it's just, how do we approach that, experience that, and delight in that beauty of truth? So offer that for reflection this evening. Okay, so this is our lunar observance, and I've been away for a few days, and I'm not quite sure what the schedule is. I assume it's probably a optional vigil, but for those who are going to keep the vigil, and just to opportunity for continuing one's practice, meditation through the evening, tea at midnight, puja at 3 in the morning, and if not, and I'm definitely not going to be doing that. I'm out of steam. I was out of steam before I got back here. So, but also there's a couple announcements that Ajahn Chunda left. He's gone in to teach at the Sudana Center this evening. Probably taken a few. We passed the Prius with people in it on West Road. So there was a gang of them heading in. But he said to let people know that he will, Ajahn Chunda will need the DV left where it is. It's probably parked over there, or wherever it is, and because he needs to use it tonight and tomorrow. And then also let people know there is a live gas line next to where the DV is parked, and we should be very careful parking there. So there's we've got PG&E has got a tank at the back of the dining hall, and then it's sort of, there's a line that's sort of into our mains, so that we have gas to use. They're doing a big test on their big mains gas line that runs at the front of the monastery, and they've had to close that all down, and but anyway, they've got to, so be careful of that. Make sure you, one, if you're parking the DV, not to run over stuff, or if you happen to have a sharp object in your hand, you're not testing it on just random lines that are for the fun of it, just to see what happens. Okay, we could close the evening with